by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, Section 1245 did not subject the power of the House of Assembly to that of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission in granting pension or gratuity for former governors and their deputies who were not impeached. 3. By Section 1245 of the 1999 Constitution, the pension or gratuity of former governors or deputies who are not impeached does not need to be the same with the remuneration of a serving governor or deputy governor as determined by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. This is not the case under Section 84(5), where the president or vice president shall be entitled to pension for life, at a rate equivalent to the annual salary of the incumbent president or vice president. 4. The power of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission to determine remuneration, salaries and allowances under Sections 84(1), 124(1) and paragraph 32D of Part 1 of the third schedule to the 1999 Constitution relates to office holders of the office mentioned. Those are the words used. Holders of the office mentioned in Sections 84 and 124 of the 1999 Constitution. And political office holders, i.e., those still in office, not those who have left office. Now the question, are local government offices covered? Especially given paragraph 32D of Part 1 of the third schedule to the 1999 Constitution, which talks of political office holders, including the president, vice president, governors, deputy governors, ministers, commissioners, special advisors, legislators. Those are the words used there. Now, the Court of Appeal in Honorable Benjamin Omokolo and others versus Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission suggested that local government offices were covered. However, by Charles Nwokedi versus Anambra State Government and another, the Supreme Court, which is a Supreme Court decision, the inclusion of chairman of local government, vice chairman, secretary to local government, supervisors, special advisors, and PA to the chairman, leader of the local government legislative council, deputy leader and councillors by the Anambra State Law number 7 of 2001 in the list of political office holders or public officers whose salary shall be fixed by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission and charged upon the Consolidated Revenue Fund of Anambra State was held to be against the express provisions of Section 1244 of the 1999 Constitution. To the extent that the salaries and emoluments of local government councils are concerned, what this means is that the Court of Appeal decision in Omokolo can no longer be good law, as it has been effectively and in that regard overruled by the Supreme Court decision in Woking. In determining employees' appropriate pay and benefits, economic justice dictates that via the take-home pay concept, wage must keep up with inflation. Because take-home pay is gross pay less all deductions, it has important practical effects. Lending institutions, for instance, generally look only at the take-home pay to determine whether and by how much to extend credit or not. So, for the economic citizen, the lower the take-home pay is, rights as to financial inclusion will be adversely affected. It is not uncommon to see employers failing to deduct income tax so as to put more money in the hands of employees. In fact, in one of the cases I decided, I had to deny the claimant recovery for arrears of salary on the ground that what was paid to him initially didn't include the deduction of income tax. And it was a very funny case because under cross-examination, what the claimant, who was the employee, complained about was that when he was being interviewed for the job, the employer said certain things about there was no need putting this thing in black and white interpreted that as something untoward, deliberately done to ensure that income tax was not paid. And on that ground, I denied the employer the right to recover even the arrears of salary that he came for. So, as I draw the curtain in this keynote address, I note the cost of living crisis sweeping across the globe, including Europe, coming on the heels of the COVID-19 scourge and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. It is made worse by high inflation, with prices of food and fuels to energy soaring. With protests spreading as a result, pressure is mounting on governments and employers. In particular, employers are struggling to absorb costs that cannot even be passed on to customers, and employees have to struggle to keep pace with inflation. With disposable income squeezed, households struggle to make ends meet. The impact on employee productivity and engagement at work can be adverse. What then can we do? Some three authors suggest that employers can take any of these steps to support their staff financially. Give them a pay rise, or offer them a one-off cost of living payment or allowance pay. For employees, there is the option of extra hours in the current job, or a second job with an unconnected employer. The problem with this, however, is firstly, the availability of the second job itself. High unemployment rates suggest that the second jobs may be unavailable. And secondly, employers may not consent to second jobs, especially where exclusivity clauses exist in the contracts of employment. It is a common sight in Nigeria to see employees side hustle, even while on duty. Female employees sell wares even while on duty, and male employees engage in other businesses. Professionals generally engage in private practice. Employment rules may frown on all of this, as where Rule 030312 of the Public Service Rules, hawking or engaging in any other form of trading on office premises during working hours is prohibited. Generally, today's employees develop outside interests in a second income stream. While this may not necessarily be a negative, bringing financial benefits to the employee and also helping to develop the employee's general skill set, the authors opine that there are potential risk areas to be alive to. In their words, and I quote, "A side hustle is likely to be less risky than a second job, and not something that an employee believes, possibly correctly, requires permission. Is this work being done outside of office hours? For staff working from home or on a hybrid basis, an employer may be concerned that an employee with a side hustle is not devoting their time and attention to their primary role. While this could be grounds for performance management, any monitoring will need to be carefully handled from a privacy and data protection. Are these business interests in competition with the employer's business, or does it raise concern from a reputational perspective?" They then concluded, there are a range of steps that employers might consider at the present time. Whatever actions are taken, however, an employer's demonstration that it has acknowledged the current crisis and the impact it has on employees is key to keeping a positive and understanding ethos, retaining staff, and even recruiting new employees. Communication and flexibility are central to any response, including consulting on the options available for employees. Showing understanding and kindness to employees who are going through a difficult time is likely to be rewarded by loyalty, which could be a very valuable investment. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Looks like the Lord has killed the microphone with his tour de force. May we give him a standing ovation, please? Standing ovation. the keys earlier had a microphone. If we have a second microphone, that should help. His Lordship, Honorable Justice Benedict Anyap has given us the most interesting keynote address that Mr. Chairman of the session, I would imagine that His Lordship rather, has covered the entire field of the 8 technical sessions that we'll be having over the next 2 days. So once again, let's appreciate him for the pathways that he has cleared for the discussants in the technical sessions that will follow. Once again, I want to announce there was a gentleman who had a second microphone. Please, let's have it. Can you change the battery of this? All right. Just before we invite the Secretary to the Government of the Federation to give his address and formally declare the forum open, permit me, for public interest purposes, to recognize the gentleman who walked in about an hour ago while the proceedings were on. I have not seen him, and I doubt if many of us here had seen him in the public space in 8 months or so since tragedy struck the Abuja-Kaduna rail service on the 28th of March. There's been a happy ending, as it were, to that tragedy, and our hearts continue to go out to the families of those passengers who lost their lives in that terror attack on that train service. But here with us today at this opening ceremony is the Managing Director of the Nigerian Railways Corporation, Engineer Fide Tohiri. Please join me in welcoming him to this one. On that note, may I respectfully invite the representative of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Dr. Maurice Iberi, is the Permanent Secretary in charge of the General Services Office in the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. He will deliver the address on behalf of the SGF, and thereafter declare the forum open. And after that, we will have the vote of thanks and a couple of announcements. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, please.
Chairman of this forum, ably represented by no other person than the Chairman, Salaries and Wages Commission, Professor Ekonta. I have to adopt that designation because you deserve that. Representatives of honorable ministers here present and representative of the head of service of the Federation, the president of the National Industrial Court of Nigeria, the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, our brother, the able comrade, Ayuba Waba, Chief Executive Officers of government agencies and parastatals here present, the Director General of Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies, the representative of First Foundation, that's Frederick Ebert State Fund, the guests of honor, distinguished resource persons here present, gentlemen of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everybody. I have the pleasure to represent the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, CFR, who has asked me to stand in here for him today. He would have loved to be here in person, but owing to the exigencies of his office, he has asked me to present this address and to formally declare open this session. So I here present the address of the SGF. I am delighted to be part of this policy forum and national dialogue on compensation management organized by the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies in collaboration with the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission and the Frederick Ebert Stephen Foundation. It is important to note that the issue of compensation is a recurring theme globally in the workplace. Its management is regarded as one of the critical functions of employers and human resource managers, which has regularly generated interest over time. This is one subject that has often pitched social partners and institutional actors in the industrial relations system against each other. Compensation, being one of the key elements of employment relationship, has a direct relationship with workers' performance, productivity, and retention, all of which are germane to the success of any organization and the economy of the country. In Nigeria, at the heart of most interrelations challenges is the issue of compensation and remuneration. Over the years, industrial sectors and specific enterprises have witnessed mixed fortunes in terms of productivity of workers and their contribution to the general output because of the incidence of incessant industrial actions. While some progress has been made by government and other regulatory agencies with respect to establishing certain parameters and framework for effective compensation management, a lot still needs to be done. With the limited resources available to this administration, the federal government has invested a lot of resources to cover the deficits that have been accrued over several decades due to challenges such as poor funding or non-availability of funds, poorly maintained infrastructure, poorly motivated workforce, to mention but a few. Arising from the COVID-19 fallout, the world faced recession, security challenges, etc., etc. Therefore, Nigeria needs to reinvigorate and retool many sectors and many organizations that have been harshly and adversely affected. Unlike what happened in other parts of the world due to harsh economic downturn, we are proud to state that we did not lay off or retrench any federal worker. I think that deserves an applause. In order to sustain these and other achievements, more attention needs to be placed on compensation for workers across board in both public and private sectors. Conversely, because of the direct relationship between productivity and growth of the organization and competition, I expect our workers to put the interest of the nation first in order to reinflate and grow our economy. The theme of this forum, compensation management and fair wage practices in Nigeria, resolving dilemmas and reinforcing milestones, is not only very apt but timely. I am sure that the discussions, deliberations and consultations on the issue of compensation by relevant stakeholders gathered here today are intended to come up with responsive compensation strategies and policies for betterment of workers and the nation at large. This forum is coming up at a time when the federal government, which has always taken the issue of staff compensation policy very seriously, needs to look at new options and incentives. This administration has, among other things, implemented the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 with the attendant negotiated consequential adjustment of salaries across board, and similarly approved and paid reviewed pensions of those on the defined pension scheme. The federal government also substantially increased the duty toll allowances of federal workers, which has stagnated since 2008 in view of the current realities. Effective payment of special COVID-19 allowances during the COVID-19 period. Reviewed and approved payment of increased hazard allowances for all staff of federal hospitals, medical centers, and clinics. The federal government is currently looking at the harmonization of public sector salaries for federal workers through the Presidential Committee on Salaries. I have taken a critical look at the topics, paper presenters, and participants, and I am very hopeful that the engagement and discussions among all levels of employees, employers, labor, and government, including major industrial relation actors, policymakers, regulatory agencies, labor lawyers and juries, development partners, academics, and the private sector will be very realistic, honest, and fruitful. I therefore expect that the outcome of your deliberations will help produce a strategic document on proposed policies and next steps for advancing compensation management in Nigeria. The policy documents should ensure effective and efficient wage administration capable of bringing industrial harmony in all our sectors, particularly in education and the health sector. I assure you that this administration of President Muhammad Buhari will implement the policy documents if it is finalized and timelessly presented. In conclusion, I commend the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies, and the Frederick Ebert State Fund Foundation for collaborating and making this policy forum a reality. It is therefore my singular honor and pleasure to declare this policy forum and national dialogue on compensation management open. I thank you for your kind attention and for listening. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
That is Dr. Maurice Mberi, PAMSEC, Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, representing the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, formally declaring this event open, this two-day National Policy Forum. It's been a couple of, maybe close to 2 hours of addresses, speeches, remarks, goodwill messages, and of course a keynote addressed by Honorable Justice Kanye. All this setting the tone for what will be quite an interactive two-day technical sessions. We hope it will be very fruitful as it promises to. Very quickly, representing the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have here the Director overseeing the Office of the Permanent Secretary, Ambassador Janet Ulisa, OON. Thank you very much for coming around. It's time for us to hear a word of thank you, and this time I would like to call on the full-time Commissioner for Compensation, NSIWC, Dr. Mrs. Mojisola Yaya Kolade, to please give us a word of thank you.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Head of Parastate Health, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and members of the press. It's been a wonderfully filled morning with a lot of information. My Lordship, sir, I must not continue saying anything without acknowledging you. You did wonderfully well, sir. Thank you for your information. I welcome everybody to this time, because after this we'll be going into a technical session, and our technical session is going to be very robust. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We've all heard what is going on about compensation. Thank you. We've all heard what is going on about the compensation, and according to NSIWC and the Michael Imodu Foundation, we thought it is very, very important and critical at this time in our nation to discuss this so we can have further information to resolve all the challenges that we normally face. If we all remember, in very recent time, we had this industrial strikes that has been going on, disputes that went on for months, and these are critical time things that has to affect our productivity of the nation. And according to what is being said in section 34, part 1 of the exclusive legislative list of Schedule 2, the legislative powers of 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that labor, including trade unions, industrial relations, conditions, safety, and welfare of labor, industrial dispute, prescribing of national minimum wage for the Federation or any part of thereof, and industrial arbitration is the exclusive responsibility of the federal government. To this effect, the federal government appoints a tripartite committee to recommend a new minimum wage, which was established in 2019. And this includes the federal, the states, and the local government. And also included are the trade unions, the labor unions, and the employers were also included. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the Chambers of Commerce, the NASIME, and all these agencies were included. And this was when it was prescribed that the 30,000 minimum wage, national minimum wage, was enacted as a law, and this elapses in 5 years. So as we all know, 5 years comes in 2024. This is the right time for the Commission and every important stakeholder to start dialoguing and looking at what will happen in the next 2 years. And that is why it is very, very important for all stakeholders to start thinking about how are we going to deal with what is coming. So as to okay. So as to help us in the discussions that we have here, basically, the high-level panelist discussion will help in bringing issues of national minimum wage to spotlight in preparation for the next evaluation, which is in the next 2 years. Thus, these issues are, but not limited to, the current minimum wage of 30,000 per month. The other questions of concern are the list of ideal minimum wage given to the ever-changing economic and realities of this country. Should there be one minimum wage? Just talking about what the panelists will be talking about. What are the implications of this? Should there be exemptions and to the applications of minimum wage? What exemptions should be granted? And what are the implications if exemptions are granted? What are the experiences? What experiences can Nigeria draw from? And what are the best practices for the economic, given the economic and social, cultural, and political peculiarities of our country? These are some of the things that the panelists will consider. Definitely not an exclusive list. We are all getting ready to have an invigorating, exhilarating, educative discussion from our panelists. Now let me go to thanking everybody here. This is to thank you for taking your time coming here. We appreciate you at NSIWC. We appreciate Michael and Modu Commission appreciate you. And we hope at the end of this discussion, we hope we will be able to have some robust discussion and have some great ideas to put into papers that will be established for future minimum wage and all other things. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you for coming.
All right, thank you very much for thanking all those who have taken time out to be present at this opening ceremony, and all those, of course, who will be participating fully in the course of the two-day policy forum. We're close to the end of the opening ceremony, and I've been asked to announce that we shall be having a 30-minute tea break, but because we have spent so much time, that will be abridged to about 20-25 minutes. The dignitaries will be escorted to a meeting room where they will have theirs, and then in generality, we'll also have a location for their tea break, an opportunity for us to also stretch our legs, and we will reconvene at 1:15 for the first technical session, which is on making and implementing national wage laws in the context of Nigeria's diversity and federal system. But before we rise formally, and that is to say, take the national anthem, may I respectfully, Mr. Chairman, kindly request you and the dignitaries who are on the front row to please come over here to the platform for a group photograph. We know that some of the participants had to step out for their budget defense at the National Assembly, and so they are not immediately available. So may I respectfully invite all those who are on the front row to please come forward on the platform here, and then we have the roll-up banner behind them so that we can have the photograph. Chairman, sir, this should be the appropriate location. PAMSEC SGS office, ILO. So the chairman says those on minimum wage are those who will be taking the photograph right now, including the manager of the tent. Yes, that's right. Yes. So all those, of course, who are the front row, and then the directors of FES, director FES, that is Ebert Foundation. Executive Director of Amnesty International, we understand, is also available. All right, so I believe you've had enough shots. Mr. Chairman, sir. All right, so we, as I said, we will be reconvening at 1:15 for the first technical session. To end the opening ceremony formally, please let's rise for the Nigerian national anthem. The Nigerian national anthem. And as we know, once the anthem is being rendered, no movement. No movement when the national anthem is being rendered. Arise, O compatriot.